Once you turn 72, your face gets turned into Swedish meatballs. This is Spoilers.
This is Spoilers.
Dude, that was so nasty. Ugh. Like,
that was so awesome.
That was so terrifying, but we'll get into that in a bit. I am your co-host, Stevie, tonight, and we have just a really small skeleton crew because, quite frankly, we're supposed to be doing the Darjeeling Limited tonight, and Josh has pushed us off for like a month. So here we are tonight doing Midsommar. And as always with me,
Midsommar.
When we do A24 movies, is my best friend in the entire world, Pappy.
Hello, this is Pappy, recording from Denver. You're my best friend too. I am so excited to do this. What have we done together? We've done The Lobster. We've done...
I feel like The Lobster was the first big A24 jump off.
It Comes at Night. Like, these are some of my favorite movies to do. Love them or hate them, they're always so fun to talk about. And I'm a big fan of this movie. Let's get that out of the way.
Big time fan. And did you see this opening night?
No, I saw it the first Friday, so last Friday, that it came out in Minnesota. I saw it with Spoiler Woman, my lovely girlfriend, and we walked out of the theater and we were both just kind of like in a daze, like, what the fuck did we just watch? Like, it takes it out of you. It's a journey. Like, and you're it's not like you can do this and then do like word problems afterwards. It's kind of like the last thing you do.
I feel like there's an uncomfortable silence, like post-film, a good 10 minutes.
It's a good thing our relationship is pretty secure. Otherwise, this would be a pretty tough movie to watch if you're like about to go through a breakup or something.
If you're in a rocky relationship where you're not on good footing with your significant other, do not go see this movie.
Yeah.
Or if you have like a best friend who's in a terrible relationship, advise this movie. Either which way to go. But Pap, this movie starts off so gloom, like like on a real bummer. What goes down?
Well, we find out that our main character, whose name is Danny, played by Florence Pugh. I haven't seen her in anything else, have you? She's going to be in the upcoming Little Women, which is going to be a big movie. But
is that going to be a big movie?
I think so. It's Greta Gerwig, and she's pretty well liked, especially after Lady Bird.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I feel like Little Women hit peak like on the Hallmark Channel in the 90s. But
built-in audience. But yeah, she's concerned about her sister committing suicide, or she's concerned about her sister. Like, she sent like a cryptic email, and it turns out she committed a murder-suicide of her family. So, and like, there's also that opening tapestry that I sent you to.
Tells the entire story.
Yeah, it's like the opening shot of the movie. It was commissioned by like some artist guy, but like, yeah, on the left it's like black. You see the tubes and the skulls, and then you see like going to Sweden, and you see the maypole. It's like the whole story is like laid out for you in the first shot.
You see the Pied Piper luring the people.
It's so awesome. It's such a creative touch. The movie starts very bleak and very dark, but then from there, like, the colors are totally light, basically. Do you want to talk about the rest of the crew too? Because we have Christian, who's her boyfriend. How would you describe Christian? Jack Rayner, 3 Movie Club.
Okay, so I've heard 5 different people like call him different names throughout this movie. Is it Christian, Kristen, Christian? Which one is it?
I like Christian because I feel like that was an intentional choice given the nature of like the pagan rituals. I thought that was clever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And he's also in, did you recognize him? He's the stepbrother in Sing Street.
Yeah.
And he's also in Free Fire. My spoiler was going to also be the stepbrother from Sing Street gets burned in a bear suit. That was my backup spoiler. But dude, I kind of feel bad for him. Like, he does some shitty things at points in this movie which are unforgivable, but like, he just wants to break up with this chick, and then her family dies, and then he can't. And that's basically why everything happens to him.
Yeah, so Ari Aster did the same thing with Hereditary it did with this movie, and throughout these 2 films, you're never on even footing. Like, ever. Like, you're never on even footing. And so, like, Jack Rayner, Christian, and Danny have been in this relationship for about 4 years now, and he's just tired of it. He's had it. It sounds like she's full of drama. He just wants to get out of it. And his friends aren't supportive of his relationship either. And by circa, I mean, it's pretty terrible how it happens, though. After the murder-suicide, he feels like compelled to stay with her because of what happened. And that just makes the relationship even worse.
Mm-hmm. Very graphic showing of the murder-suicide, too. Like, what she did was she took the pipes. She hooked up some like tubes to the tailpipes of her family's cars, ran them inside, stuck it in her parents' room, and then she duct taped one to her face, and there was like puke everywhere. Did you see that?
Yeah, she also like duct taped the door underneath so air like they would poison her parents faster.
Yeah.
Like it was gruesome.
It was gruesome, but okay, so on the off chance that you haven't seen this movie, I feel like that opening scene really isn't like indicative of the rest of the movie because like
not at all.
The crew, Christian's crew, who you're talking about, they're actually pretty funny. Like, you got William Jackson Harper. He's from The Good Place, What the Fork, who plays Josh, who's kind of like his academic rival. There's a Swedish guy himself. How do you say his name? Pelle? He's the one who's like bringing them to this festival. And then I thought it was a really standout performance. He's actually one of my favorite actors today.
I love Will Poulter.
Yeah, Mr. Eyebrows himself.
What do you want, eyebrows?
How would you describe the character of Mark, dude? Because he's hilarious, and he's the comic relief of this movie that Hereditary doesn't have.
So, Mark is not like a true academic like Christian and Josh are.
Doesn't seem to be.
He's not, and Will is like any mid-20s person would be at this point in their life. He's not married, he's single, and he like thinks the idea of like Sweden, like Swedish beaches, Swedish women going to nightclubs, like kind of having like a European experience during the summer. Like that's what in his mind he's going to, and he's extremely immature.
Yeah, I just saw Spider-Man Far From Home, and like when they go to Europe, like the kids are all like, trying to hook up with girls, but that makes sense because they're like high schoolers. These kids are like in grad school, and like he's taking this experience in Sweden, and he's like planning on partying and like banging all these Swedish chicks, and like he has a vape with him the whole time, and every time he hits the vape, I freaking crack up. It's so funny. Like, he's doing it inappropriate times, just totally disrespectfully. Like nobody else has a vape. It's really funny. But like you were saying, like they're going on this trip to Sweden, and Christian kind of gets like bullied into taking his girlfriend who's on the rocks like with him.
Can you explain something to me?
Yeah.
Like when he like closes the friend group off, and he says like she's coming, but she's not actually coming. What did he mean by that?
Well, I think it was kind of one of those things where he offered, and like he was kind of hoping that she would say no. And like we've all been there, right? Where it's not so much that, but where you're kind of like you promise two groups of people conflicting things, and you're just hoping it kind of like works out, and it didn't.
Yeah,
like,
you're just
kind
of hoping you don't have to actually do something.
Yeah, and the best part is Will Poulter, Mark, the whole time is like just clowning on him, and like is just so pissed about this whole situation. Like he pulls him in a different room, and like is clearly mad. Like it's super awkward and obvious, but also comedic, like really funny.
It is a funny movie.
Did you notice this about Ari Aster? Like he does a lot of this in Hereditary, which I know you're a big fan of. Hopefully we spoil that.
Big fan.
Someday, but he does a lot of like creative shots in Hereditary. Like I'm thinking of like with the dollhouse and how it relates to the big people, and even with the house in the backyard. Like the last shot of that movie is like really coolly framed, just black and in the triangle of the house. But like in this, he has like so many great transitions, and the cinematography is so phenomenal. Like I'm thinking of the one where they're on the plane, or like she like runs into the bathroom because she's crying, like from that scene in the apartment.
This is after Pella like said sorry, like he's like condolences,
and he wants her to go too. Like he sees something in her, which is important. But she like runs to the bathroom crying, and like the camera like pans up, so it would be as though you're looking from like the second story of this building down on the bathroom, and as she opens the door to the bathroom, it actually leads to the bathroom on the plane, and it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, he did a lot of that in Hereditary too, because he like you and I talked about this in great detail, but he made the house in Hereditary like into a maze where the camera could literally go in and out of each room like flawlessly, and that's the way he did it when it panned over. And there's a pretty cool transition to like from the start of the movie to like I always say this about films, like where a movie actually begins. And that's when they get to Sweden, and when they're on the road and I don't know how he did, if it was a drone shot or not, but he flipped the road upside down.
Mm-hmm. And it's super slow. It's uncut. Like, it might have been with some CGI, but it feels real. And like, I've never seen anything like that in a movie.
It was really trippy from the very start. Cool shot.
Speaking of trippy, dude, like, so they take mushrooms right when they get to Sweden. I feel like I talked to a friend who has firsthand knowledge of psychedelics, and he said that it's very accurate to the psychedelic experience. What do you think about, like... Yeah,
also was texting with a friend who seemed pretty active in the psychedelic circle, and he said about this film that it was pretty spot on, from people's attitudes to, like, even Mark saying, like, hey, can you, like, lay down? Like, can you, like, lay down? Like, I like it when you lay down.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like, when he pointed at that guy, and he's like, who's this guy? Who, I don't like him. Who's that guy? Like, extremely accurate. But he also told me that, like, under no circumstances should Danny have partaken in psychedelic mushrooms at that part. Like, no reasonable human being was like, yeah, you should do this.
Yeah, absolutely not. She's peer pressured into it by a group of friends. And my friend who I was texting with told me that, you know, it's all about set and setting. If you have any doubt about doing them, you probably shouldn't be doing them, is what he told me. So, like, it was just... Even like the way that she freaked out was so accurate to like bad trips of, you know, that you'll see like on a college campus where someone's like, everyone's laughing at me, you know what I mean? Like super paranoid. Like that was pretty spot on and fantastic. But like, so that she passes out, then they go into the village, and this is like,
and Jack, I mean, really I keep calling him Jack. It's Christian seemed like really angry when he found her. He like seemed like really ticked.
It was pretty shitty of them to like make her take it and then like be shitty that she had a bad trip. Like that was not cool. Yeah.
It's like, how long have I been out? Well, we found you here 6 hours later. Like he was like, oh geez, like you should be like worried about your longtime girlfriend. I don't know. What like a strange greeting. You know what I mean? Like they're just out in this field, and like the dude who walks up to him, like Pele's like brother Ingmar.
Or something. Yeah, which I don't think we noted this already, but he mentions that his parents burned in a fire. Which will kind of come into crystallization at the end of the movie, like what that exactly means. But he like his buddy Ingmar just comes up and he's got all these like giant peg of shrooms. Like, what kind of a greeting? Hey, I know you just landed.
If you don't like the shrooms, we have tea.
Yeah, exactly. That's not the issue.
And he, with him, has two British couple that are engaged, Connie and Simon, whose fates are absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I thought they were a nice touch to the movie because like everyone is acting pretty realistically. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if this is like a pure horror movie per se. Ari Aster himself actually called it more of a fairy tale and a melodrama than a horror movie. But like, it helps to have them as characters too, because they're like, let's get the fuck out of here as soon as things start getting wonky. Which, do you want to kind of talk about that? So like, what's going on at this ceremony?
Okay, so the first ceremony, they bring out these like two like old people. They're elders, definitely elders of the group, and they kind of like raise torches with them, and they're definitely like the main focal point of the first like opening ceremony of Midsommar. Which can you explain something to me real quick? I need to go see this movie again, but is Midsommar every year, but this was just like the 90th? How does it work?
I feel like this is one of the problems that I have with the movie, and
it's loose. It's real loose.
I'll touch on it more. I do think it's one of the better horror films of the decade, but I think that another month or two of editing actually would have really served this movie. I was listening to an interview with Ari Aster, and he was saying that he literally finished editing it, quote unquote, like 2 weeks or a week before the film came out. So it's like he was working up until the deadline, and they moved it up from August to July. And I feel like the problem with this movie is it straddles the line of having too much exposition and like not enough, because it's really confusing as to the ritual or the cadence around the ceremony. Like they say it's every 90 years, but everyone seems to know exactly what's going on. And there's like
30 pictures of May Queens.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, like, come on.
How would that even be possible? And they're talking about how it's like the hottest summer in recent memory, but that they're only doing this every 90 years. So, and just given like what these old people are about to do, they say that like, okay, so basically your life's in like 4 parts. It's like 0 to 18, 18 to 36, 36 to 54, and 54 to 72. And like once
Spring,
you get to
summer, fall, winter.
Exactly. It's like a circle. And then once you get to 72, you basically commit this like ritualistic suicide. So they were kind of like leading the dinner party, like everyone sat and stood when they did, but then they jumped off a cliff. And this is kind of like what my opening spoiler was. Like the old lady's
the two
brain
older people
explodes on a rock. Like some Canon B schlock in all of its glory. It is awesome.
Yeah, and like you think like, yo, she hit a rock, not that bad. And then the camera zooms in real quick and like shows her face just flopping around. It's just gruesome.
Nasty, awesome, hilarious gore. Like I laughed out loud in the theater and I was the only one, and spoiler, woman looked over at me like with disgust. I thought it was so funny. But yeah, and then the dude jumps and he doesn't die.
I got some PTSD from that dude.
Yeah. And he's gasping for air. And this is something that I want to talk about too, at kind of like a thematic level that I think is important. Did you notice that, like how in this community, and I do kind of want to tie this into other A24 horror movies as well, like Hereditary and The Witch, like there's always a protagonist who feels like disassociated with their family or their group of friends. Mm-hmm. And then there is this dark element. And in that dark element, they find a new family and a new community that embraces them. That happens to Anna Taylor-Joy in The Witch. That happens to, I forget his name,
That's like beat for beat Lady Bird.
Yeah, Hereditary. Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense. Like they're targeting these movies to teenagers, and teenagers feel, like estranged from their family, and that's like the whole thing. It's like dark teenagers are being oh yeah, man, it's a happy ending without the good guys winning, essentially.
Yeah.
But like when the old guy jumps off the cliff and is gasping for, they're all like.
They're all like, booing him.
Well, they're booing him, but they're also kind of like mimicking him. You know what I mean? And like, and other times, like when the people are burning in the end, spoiler alert, they're like, all the people are screaming with them. It's like that group, that family is like hyper sympathetic to the grief and the pain of others in the group. You know what I mean? Which is like what Danny's looking for. He
gnarled up his leg too, and as someone who's broken his leg in 3 places and taken the ankle off the bone, I had a tough time looking at that, dude.
Dude, it was nasty.
It was so nasty.
Do you remember how they dispatch him? Okay,
yeah. So I noticed this when they were walking over to Dead Jump Mountain. There was this girl carrying Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, like along with her. And I was like, that's interesting. What are we going to use that for? Dubro didn't die, so she walks over there. I imagine she's the daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was 2 daughters. And the daughter goes over there and smashes his face and kills him, hands it back to the sister, and she does the same thing. And at this point, mistakes were made by Connie and Simon. They were making a real scene about this.
Okay, well, first of all, how fucked up is it? Because I'm not missing this, right? Josh, the guy from The Good Place.
This is where it got real loose, Pap, and this is the only part of the movie that bothered me.
He knew that was going to happen, didn't he? Like he
knew that should happen. He he's very bright. He's probably the brightest person in this group.
They're studying this. It's like part of their dissertation. Or
he's like obsessed with like this commune. Like he's been studying it. He wants to write about it. How hard would it have been to pull Danny aside and say, "Hey, you probably shouldn't go tomorrow," or like, "Hey guys, like this is like I'm gonna go, but you don't have to."
It seems pretty honestly like
it's
cruel.
Egregious.
It's cruel on his part because, like, her parents died in a murder-suicide, and this is a ritualistic suicide. Like, of course she's going to be upset. And then, like, even Christian's reaction is, like, so unsympathetic. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, he wants to stay and, like, study them. And, like, he changes his thesis to be about that, which is pretty funny that they're, like, fighting over it. They're having a thesis war.
That was a part of the movie I think that could have been edited out.
I agree. Yeah, it could have.
The thesis, like PhD, like, graduate school dissertations of like, I'm doing this. No, I think that could have been taken out and the movie would have stayed the exact same.
Another weird part about that scene too, and I really don't understand this choice because it doesn't seem to serve the story in any way, is that for some reason, Will Poulter isn't there at that ceremony. Like, he literally goes, I'm going to take a nap. And then they come back. He's like, damn, I missed the best part. And like, I guess that's a funny line, but like, why? What are you talking about? Like, why? Who's just gonna take a nap in the middle of this like ceremony? That makes no sense.
No sense. And like the other part too is Pella. I think he calls it like a Bashtup or something like that. Like Josh immediately recognizes that word, and he asks Pella like an actual one, and Pella looks at him and goes, "It's pretty actual." Like,
yeah,
like, hey, this is like going down. And like Ari Aster's a great director and a great writer, but this was played really loose.
Yeah,
like common sense really flew out the window at this point.
And I don't want to like CinemaSins the movie, but I would like to also point out that Hereditary came out in June of 2018. We're recording this in July of 2019. And I talked about this on Us. I don't understand the rush. Like, I thought Jordan Peele. I did that again. Jordan Peele. God damn it. Jordan Peele rushed it after like 2 years after Get Out. I don't see the point.
You thought that was a quick turnaround.
I don't see the point. And like, Ari was saying in that interview that he was storybooking the shots, like while Hereditary was coming out. He flew to Hungary on June 9th, the day after Hereditary premiered in the United States. Like, why not slow down a little bit and just tighten it up? Like, I think these are fair criticisms, given that he's trying to flex and put out 2 movies in 13 months. Like, don't you think so?
Isn't that all sophomore like art though? Is like someone like spends a good part of their life like investing themselves into one project, and then they rush it on their second and they just miss things. I think it's a fair criticism just to wait.
Yeah, and like even. Because I mean, again, like I thought the film turned out pretty well, but even like we're talking about things that could have been cut just to save some time, or like clean up the story, I think would have really helped. But like this next part of the film though is really strong because like we have like the local. It's a lot of exposition, but it's done through the lens of these 2 competing academics, like trying to gather information to write their thesis.
Christian's a lazy academic.
True, he does steal the thesis idea, but I mean, like, you'll agree though, it's not bad exposition when it's done like this. It's kind of cool. Did anything stand out? Like, there's those runes that are like, let's talk about the runes. Yeah.
That have each rune, like each part of a rune has like a different like how would I say this? Like emotion to it, and like that's how they read it, and also the way they wrote their scripture is through an inbred person. I don't know if it was male or female. Was like hand painting like these paintings, and then the elders get together, study them, and interpret the scripture off that.
So do you think, okay, here's again where the story is kind of frustrating, because let's skip ahead. Will Poulter pisses on a sacred tree. Yeah, it's one of those movies.
Okay, that's one of my favorite parts.
It is hilarious, especially how the Swedish guy's like trying to fight him at the time.
At the dinner table later, it's my favorite. It's the funniest line of the whole movie is when he sits down. He's like, "That guy's still pissed," and he looks at him and he goes, "Is he gonna kill me?"
Yeah, exactly. So he pissed on the tree, but then he becomes one of those things. Am I wrong? Did I see that, or am I crazy?
What's that?
I thought Will Poulter became like. What happens to Will Poulter? He gets killed, or he becomes one of those things, or what? Because
he got killed, they cut off his face. Okay, and then the inbred person wore his face as a mask.
Oh shit, that makes so much more sense. Okay, never mind. So then they need people like Will Poulter and like Christian to come in and insert new, and I guess kind of Danny too, to insert new like DNA in the group, basically. Right? Like
that's the whole point, is like, how does this commune keep growing without overlapping into incest? And that's like when the main elder's talking to Josh and like kind of like their sacred temples, when he was like, well, we have outsiders join, and sometimes cousins do get involved, but we don't do incest around here, which is not the truth.
Yeah, it's very strange.
And like this is also the part of the movie where like something is becoming amiss. Especially with the whole Connie and Simon situation, because they're done. They're like leaving. Yeah. They want to get out, and all of a sudden one of the elders comes to Connie and was like, "Oh, Simon left the train station. We'll send a vehicle back for you." And they're like, "That makes no sense. That makes no sense." And at this scene when Will Poulter sits down, like later on, they're like, "Have you seen Connie?" because before we hear her screaming, like for bloody murder, we just hear her screaming. And he was like, yeah, I saw her like running for a sprinting competition earlier, and we have to assume that she's dead as well. So something's definitely amiss. Yeah,
something's weird. And like the other thing is too is that there's a lot of like visual foreshadowing in this film. Like we mentioned, obviously the tapestry at the beginning that literally foreshadows
explains the whole movie,
the entire story. But even then, in this, there's a great production design on the camp, and there's always like weird paintings and art things that are like alluding to what will happen, and like one of them is like a bear burning, which is pretty cool. But another one is like pretty on the nose and pretty straightforward. The camera does a right to left pan, and it tells the story of like it's like a medieval looking painting. Yeah,
it tells the story of the love rune.
A woman like falls in love with a man, and like she has like big hearts for eyes. Like it's super on the nose. And what does she do? Like clips some pubes and puts them in a stew.
Pubes, puts it in a human meat. They were eating humans, right? I'm not.
I think maybe. Yeah.
I think. The very beginning when they're eating those meat pies, they were eating Simon. I'm almost 1,000% positive.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, she like clips her pubic hair, puts it in a meat pie, then drops her period blood and juice, and then they fall in love around a giant ceremony. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. Like that part was pretty gross, but also pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie.
Which part?
The whole period blood stuff. It was kick-ass.
So you really had to be paying attention at this point, but Christian's drinking the only red drink in camp.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
exactly.
The only one.
And like even like the way that the camera pans, like I said, it's kind of on the nose, but it shows that story. Then like it kind of like ends, and then Christian's just like standing right there at the end of that storyboard. She's like, oh shit, he's got to get love potioned by some period blood. And, like the fact that he like Ari Aster tells you that's going to happen, and then they go to the meal, and like there's just like this sense of dread, which he does so well. Hereditary in this, like they're more filled with a sense of dread than they are scary, which is
they're not suspenseful jump scares. They're just very unsettling, unnerving films.
Yeah. Let's tie up a couple of these storylines. So like we mentioned, Will Poulter pisses on a tree, gets killed. Josh, who's originally going to write the thesis on this place, the one who knew about like the ceremony with the suicide, what did he try to do? He put on his shoes at night, and I thought like, oh, this guy's going to be smart. He's going to run away. But he tries to steal one of the sacred books and gets hit over the head, right?
With Mjolnir's hammer, yeah. So,
So he's dead.
I don't know. This part annoyed me because I feel like it was character to serve plot and not plot to serve character.
Which one? Which character?
Josh's. Like, he's like an academic. He's very bright. He's also an anthropology, like, major. Like, this is his life. And you think he would be, like, sympathetic to, like, not disobeying, like, this commune. You know what I mean? Like, they repeatedly told him. So it didn't make a lot of sense for me that, like, he would throw logic out the window, and also, like, his inner intuition, like, as an anthropological studier, to like go and break the rules and norms like that. I thought that was the laziest death in the whole movie.
Yeah, it didn't seem to fit his character. Like either he has to believe that people are actively being murdered, and if that's the case, he's choosing to like hang around in this place where his friends are being killed, or he doesn't believe that, in which case he's just a total disrespectful jerk that we didn't even realize. And it kind of calls into question, maybe he did know about the suicide and was just being an asshole to Danny. Like, I don't know.
Could be.
It doesn't seem to be that way, though. The characters kind of have like a niceness about. I don't know. It doesn't seem like
Josh seemed nice.
Yeah, not cruel.
Not cruel. Like even like Mark was a jerk, but there wasn't like malice in it. I didn't think. Like a lot of these characters are nice. And what was I going to say? There was a great line after that, like Quilt telling the story about how Christian's going to fall in love with that very young girl, very young.
Spoiler woman suggested to me a spoiler, something like Christian damn near fucks a child and gets burned alive or something like that, which would have been pretty funny too.
Dude, she was probably 13, 14 years old.
That was weird.
I love that part where Christian just goes, so there's a bear, like why is the bear in a cage? And Ingmar just goes, yeah, it's a bear. And he just keeps walking.
That is pretty funny.
There's some great lines, but so throughout this film, this is really like I almost call it like a relationship drama between Danny and Christian. They're being pulled apart in separate directions. And the reason I say it's like an uneven footing film is like Danny's kind of coming into her own with this group. Like they're like starting to accept her. They're like kind of championing her. And Christian's being like kind of like placed at the wayside. Like little by little. And that takes us into the dancing festival. My favorite scenes of the entire movie. What'd you think of it?
It's so awesome. Like, the music is so great. The choreography is so great. The costumes are so great. The colors are so great. Everything about this is phenomenal. The way it's
Danny's
shot,
tripping on shrooms at this point.
Yeah, exactly. We're returning to kind of that trippy vision, which is very like disorienting as an audience member. If you're listening to this and you have an opportunity to go see this on a big screen, because like the feeling
you have to
that you'll get, like, and if you can go like really late at night, like Stevie did, or like I went pretty late at night too.
The 10:10 show, man. I didn't get home till 1:30 in the morning.
It'll just like kind of like just throw you off for like the next 12 hours or so. It's like so disorienting. But like
that, and like when people are hallucinating or drugged, you know it, because Ari Aster, through CGI or how he did it, is having like the environment around them breathe and distort behind the main characters, and it's so neat.
Exactly. One of the most notable ones is like there's a flower on Danny's head, and it keeps getting bigger and smaller. It kind of looks like a pupil,
it's like
getting
breathing.
bigger and smaller. Yeah, and like I cannot stop staring at it. Like I'm having a flashback right now, just like thinking about it. But yeah, the dance scene is awesome. It's basically dance till you drop. Last person standing wins. And then like. This is also, I don't know if you noticed this is like the first time you see Florence Pugh, a.k.a. the character Danny, like smile.
She's like, as I said, like she's like coming into her own in this scene. Like she's like having fun with the girls or teaching her things. And like when she starts like twisting with the dance and getting down to the routine, she's like genuinely happy.
There's one point where she's like, I'm speaking Swedish. My favorite,
like, dude, that part was so funny.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, and it doesn't seem, horrific in any way. And like to contrast that from like some of the scenes from Hereditary, it couldn't be more different visually. But like I was saying, like you see her smile, and like you realize that she hasn't smiled once the whole movie. You know what I mean? Not really, not a real authentic smile.
Not a real authentic smile, no.
And when you see your character being happy, like you start to realize that, like, he's Ari Aster is talking about like a group embracing you after a breakup. You know what I mean? Like coming back into your friends or a new group of friends, like moving to a new city. Like that's the kind of shit like he's talking about. And like when she wins the competition, she's crowned the May Queen. And like
people get hype.
People get hype. She downs this giant like flower vest thing, which was kind of cool, I guess. Maybe some fake flowers. I don't know. Look kind of cool, but like I don't know. Did I miss anything from that dance scene? It's pretty significant.
The shots are
awesome.
Pretty amazing. Like the choreography is incredible. That scene where
incredible.
Like they could have been like talking gibberish, but they were on such like a similar emotional wavelength that it was like they were communicating. Yeah, I don't know. It was just really neat, and it was also like an important like juxtaposition that Christian is like paying no attention to Danny at this point.
Not
like
at all.
She's like the main focal point of these scenes, and like he's like kind of wandering off like in his own world. Like he's like not like even concerned about her in the slightest.
They're literally like drifting apart. It's like the final part of their breakup, and he's already starting to look at that other girl who
Let's
loved
get
poaching
into
him.
it.
Okay, so you said that you thought that the academic competition could have been cut. I feel like while this is an important part of the story, I don't know if visually showing Christian fucking this like 13-year-old girl while some 50-year-old girl pushes on his buttocks to like enhance his humping, and all of these old women are like moaning and dancing around him. I don't know. I feel like
funniest part of the whole movie.
It was hilarious. My theater went bananas.
Dude, we were losing it. My theater, okay, it was crazy. I was in the small theater at Cinemark. It's only 4 rows. And it was completely sold out, the 10:10 show. And everyone lost it.
Sold out? That's nuts.
Yeah. Everyone was losing it. And the part where it really started to go down was when I think it was the mom of this very young woman, like, put her hands on Christian's cheeks and started yelling with the daughter. And then all the other women started yelling. Everyone just lost it.
Yeah, they're like moaning, right? They're like kind of, and it's kind of that theme of like this cult, this group like is hyper sympathetic, almost like hive mind-esque, where if like one is feeling an emotion,
they eat at people's motions.
They all feel it. Yeah, but like, okay, that's what happens on screen. And can I counter with that? We see Danny going through the celebration. She walks up to the door, like she hears the moaning, and she hears like this ritualistic moaning of like all these women. She walks up to the keyhole, looks in, sees Christian fucking this girl, and is absolutely horrified. Before we go on to what happens next, because the scream is iconic and it's great, I want to talk about that, but like, don't you think that like, wouldn't that have been enough? Like, couldn't we have just let our imagination do that? Like, I feel like everything I know about movies tells me the imagination would have been better in that case, but maybe I'm wrong, because it was hilarious. But what do you think?
You mean, so you think like just the idea of like hearing the moans and not actually seeing Jack, like,
I guess, yeah,
not actually seeing Christian in the room, you think like it would have been better left to the imagination?
I feel like you could have cut like 10 minutes and that would have really helped with the pacing, but then you lose the joke. So I don't know.
You do lose kind of like that shock factor. And here's what I'll say about Ari Aster, which I didn't mind this not being cut, because this is a movie about a cult and not really like a horror movie about like people going to see a cult. You know what I mean? They actually like explore a lot of the parts of this cult.
Mm-hmm. The mythology, like we said, like there are some inconsistencies, but it's almost just because like the mythology of the cult is so cool. Like I'm like hyper paying attention. You know what I mean? I want to learn everything about it, and like they teach you a lot.
They really like take a deep dive on it, and it really hits like a peak when Florence Pugh is, you know, she's throwing up. She's running away into like another little barn, and all the young women are like screaming with her emotions like at her. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Like being, again, that hive mind sympathy. And like, dude, she's a great actress. That scream is iconic.
Dude, that scream in the beginning like ruined my night. When she finds out that her sister and parents are dead, that blood curdling scream that Toni Collette also did in Hereditary. Oh, that was chilling.
Yeah. Ari Aster, I don't know. Like, I guess I heard that, I listened to another interview with him, one he did with The Ringer, and he was saying that he found her from Lady Macbeth, which is not a movie that I've seen, but like, man, what a great job of casting to pull her down.
I feel like everyone was a pretty perfect cast, don't you?
I wouldn't change anybody.
No one was a sore thumb in this movie whatsoever.
No, even like the random Swedish people are all really like creepy in a way, which I guess they shot this in Hungary, not Sweden, for the record. So like he was even saying that like it was really hard because it doesn't have the same like extreme daylight that Sweden has. So they only shot this in like 40 days or something, which is nuts. But yeah, so Christian impregnates this girl, and she like does the thing from The Big Lebowski where Maud's like increases the chances of conception, and she's like rolling on her back.
Yeah, and she goes, "I feel the baby." It's like, you guys pulled the goalie once. No way he did that in the first try. No way.
But so then he runs out and like hangs dong, and it's like an erect dong too. You know
it's very odd.
It's like fluffed, so that's like a thing. Then he comes across his dead companions in like a shed or something.
Simon got a pretty raw deal. Is he alive?
What happened to Simon?
Simon is hung from wire horizontally about 8 feet off the ground in this barn.
Ugh.
Were those his lungs breathing?
Yeah, I think he was still alive at that time. He had been like cut open and like was hanging like a bat.
His back was completely cut open. Flowers were stuck where his eyes were. And his lungs are breathing.
I'm not sure why is Simon having to suffer this? Like, what did he do that was that bad, other than wanting to leave?
I don't know.
There's no justice of this
like,
group. We
did see Josh's leg in a garden.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Yeah, his
sticking
upside down leg just stuck in a garden, which is even creepier when Pella's tending to a garden earlier in the movie. Like, what are you doing? Oh, just tending to the garden. No, those were humans in there.
Yeah. So like he gets knocked out and he's fed this like paralysis, and then like like fucking Tywin Lannister in like season 3 of Game of Thrones, like cutting open an elk. Like we see this elder like cutting open a bear.
And he's so surgical about it. He's like, "Oh, don't mess with the intestines. Cut along the rib cage."
Mm-hmm. Yep. And he puts Christian in the bear suit, and then as the May Queen, there are some people who are chosen to be sacrificed. They want to sacrifice like X amount of outsiders and X amount of like inside people.
It's like per outsider, they have to also do insider.
Something like that. Yeah. And like, then long story short, Danny gets to pick between Christian and some rando guy from the troop who's like chosen as like, it's like a lottery ball system.
He was very good looking too.
Yeah.
It's like that guy?
It's like a bingo thing. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
They do it. It's so funny. It's so silly. And like, this is why it's kind of like the ultimate like catharsis of like a breakup story, because she chooses to burn her cheating ex alive, paralyzed in a bear suit in this big yellow house that's been in the background of the movie the whole time. And you're like wondering, what's it for? What's in this big yellow house? It's just there to be burnt down and to burn these people alive. And it's a freaking striking last scene. Cause there's people alive in there and they're like screaming too.
It's pretty gruesome too, because they like behead all the outsiders and they go to like farm their body parts. It's really like, there's like happy music playing, but it's really grotesque.
It's awesome. And like the group is like sympathetic again to like the burning of their friends. Like they're screaming and writhing in pain. And I think the last shot is like Danny smiling, right? Or like winking or like happy.
Yeah,
like,
she's also wearing this like 100-pound flower dress. Like you can't see any extremities of her outside her head. Mm-hmm. And it was a pretty cool moment when she had to choose between Rico Suave, Swedish dude, and her ex in a bear suit. Because you could tell she's really mulling it over. Mm-hmm. And Christian never really made a peep when he was getting burned alive because he was in full paralysis.
That's Midsommar.
That's Midsommar.
Man. Anything else that we missed? Anything else you want to talk about?
I would say if you're going to see this movie, I mean, sorry if we spoiled it, or or if you didn't like it and you're listening to it now. Yeah. Like, you just have to go. I didn't really have the reference of this was going to be a horror movie. Seeing Hereditary, which Hereditary I don't really consider a full-blown horror movie. I consider that to be more of like a family drama with some horror elements in it. But, like, this is a movie about a cult and learning about the cult and kind of growing with it. So, are there parts of the cult that are scary? Yes. Are there parts of the cult that are like, wow, that seems pretty cool? Yes. And it's just a really neat blend. So, yeah, I love this movie. I couldn't recommend it anymore. Solid 10 for me.
It's a big movie, too. Like I said, it's a fairy tale. It's a breakup movie. It's a melodrama.
It's really layered.
Yeah. Jordan Peele said anything that comes after Midsommar will have to contend with it. And I was kind of curious, too. I have this as my favorite movie of the year. I was kind of like A/B tested it, and I got all the way up. It's like, yeah, I like this more than Endgame. I like this more than Toy Story 4. I like this more than Us. I like this more than Guava Island. So it's like, yeah, this is probably my favorite movie of the year. Like, who do you think is the current king of horror? Jordan Peele or Ari Aster?
They're so different. It's like trying to compare Tarantino and Wes Anderson.
I reject that because I feel like I totally reject that because like they're both doing like comedic horror movies and they both had their second movie come out this year. Like, it's a totally fair comparison. It'd be a fair comparison if they weren't in the same genre, which they are. And if they didn't both have features come out this year. Like, to me, I gotta give it to Ari, personally.
I would give it to Ari, but I like Us more than I like Midsommar. But they're like 1A, 1B. I think they're both like perfect movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think moreover, and that's just kind of like a fun debate question. I think moreover, we're lucky to have both those guys making movies. Like, this
the only
is a
reason
good
I
time
say
to be
that is because like they're both psychological horrors. I mean, they both do really well with gruesomeness as well. But also, I give Ari the nod because he does dread so perfectly. It's like, nothing can happen really of substance can happen in a scene, but you're still dreading it.
Exactly. Yeah. So, that's all that I had. 2 yeses, right? Not really much. Anything else to say?
Yeah, I was just annoyed by the people walking out of the theater saying that wasn't scary at all. I saw Hereditary and this wasn't scary. This was boring. It's like, no, like this is a beautiful movie, and it's, as I said, it's not a full-blown horror movie. It's really just, people with a lot of issues going to a commune and a lot of things going wrong, but everything that happens makes sense within that commune. You know what I mean?
Right before we throw it to spoiler, man, one more thing. Am I wrong in my criticism that like all of these A24 quote-unquote horror, thriller, whatever you want to call them, movies end in the exact same way? Like,
exact same. It's formulaic at this point.
We are the only podcast talking about this. I listened to everything and read everything I could about Midsommar, and no one else is saying that. And they're identical ending. They're not bad.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to The Witch, if you go to Midsommar, you go to Hereditary, Lady Bird's a coming-of-age film, but you can still throw it in there. It's the exact same formula.
Lady Bird needed more demons and more cults and more human sacrifice. Then it would have won the Oscar.
It's the exact same formula, though. I mean, you're really onto something, Pap. Like the next horror movie that A24 does, I bet you it has a pretty similar ending as this. Is the lost soul finding a home with the wrong people.
Well, when that movie comes out, you and I will be there to talk about it, right, buddy? Yeah.
We'll be there.
Well, that's 2 yeses. Midsommar is preserved. Go see it. One of our favorite movies of the year. Take it away, Somer Man.
Ooh, I like that.
Spoiler Man here. Our email is podcastspoilers@gmail.com. Twitter is @spoilers_pod. Our Instagram is podcastspoilers. It's lit. Josh Hensley from the Rutabaga wrote our theme song. Our spoilers hotline is 903-776-4507. That's 903-SPOIL07. Please support this podcast by leaving us an iTunes review. To do this, 1. Search for Movie Spoilers. 2. Click on our orange Spoilers Bowl logo and scroll all the way to the bottom. 3. Leave us some stars and some words. Now you can check us out on Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, Apple, and Google Podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, subscribe on SoundCloud or iTunes.
It's a bear. 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 It's a bear in a cage. In the cage is a bear. What's he doing in there? Locked inside, no room to play. On this lovely summer day. It's a bear. 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 It's a bear in a cage.
That was Spoilers.